I'm Irish American and never would I pretend to be an African. You needing a history lesson because you forgot where you came from.
After he hurled rocks and racial slurs at black school children.
He made numerous racist remarks during the attack and following his arrest.
It was a hate crime, and that's exactly what should be on his record.
Mark Wahlberg acts like he should be forgiven for his past. He has used his money and his status to pressure the justice system and bully them into erasing his hate crimes. Marky Mark has committed several crimes and has seriously harmed people along the way. There is no doubt in my mind that this man is a racist. And he's also a liar, whether it's about steroids or his intent to pardon. It's scary how such an awful person can be so powerful. So let's get into it. If you guys don't know who Mark Wahlberg is, he is an American actor, producer, businessman, and former rapper. You may have heard the name Marky Mark before, which is his stage name. So Mr. Marky Mark found himself in some trouble when the Black Lives Matter movement started because he made some posts about the movement and people started to bring up his questionable past. Many of the people in the comments accused Mark of hypocrisy because he's used racial slurs and has committed hate crimes, yet he's over here making a post in support of George Floyd. So he seems like a hypocrite to me. So Mark's issues began when he was young. He had a rough upbringing and he wasn't shy when it comes to drugs.
By the shockingly young age of just 13 years old, Wahlberg had already developed a serious cocaine habit and was abusing other substances as well. As he told Vanity Fair, he thanks God that he was never exposed to heroin, because he's certain he wouldn't have hesitated to try it.
So drugs were a big part of his life, and he also was involved in gangs from a very young age, which takes us to our first hate crime, which happened in 1986. Mark was only 15 years old. So back in the 80s, there was segregation in Boston, and I guess Mark was with a group of his buddies, and he saw some kids who were at the beach on a school field trip and decided to harass them. 15-year-old Mark and his friends started charging and chasing 3 black kids, pelting them with rocks while yelling, "Kill the slurs." I'm just like disgusted right now, until an EMT driver intervened. Thank God that person intervened because these kids were being super aggressive and who knows what they would have done. I mean, one of these kids involved in the incident actually still has a scar and was quoted saying, "I was really scared. My heart was beating fast. I couldn't believe it was happening. The names, the rocks, the kids chasing." Thankfully, the EMT saved the day, but Mark wasn't done. And the very next day, he decided to attack the same people.
The next day, Wahlberg and 2 of the 3 friends noticed one of the black children out on a field trip at Savin Hill Beach. They quickly picked up where they left off, harassing the 12-year-old boy, yelling racial slurs, threatening him, and throwing rocks.
I'm Irish American and never would I pretend to be an African. You needing a history lesson because you forgot where you came from.
This man is so incredibly cringe, and honestly, I have zero patience when it comes to people who are racist. There's there's no discussing it, like you're automatically cut off. And the fact that Mark participated in these actions speaks a lot about his true feelings. So again, the very next day, Mark and his friends harassed a group of black children who are 9, 10 years old. They're 15. What are they doing picking on these kids? And he actually did get in trouble for this situation. He had a civil rights injunction placed on him, so it wasn't necessarily like a lot of justice. And honestly, maybe if he got in a little more trouble, he would have just stopped there, but he didn't. And he ended up attacking more people a few years later.
It occurred 2 years after she secured a civil injunction against Wahlberg after he'd hurled rocks and racial slurs at black school children. The injunction essentially warning Wahlberg that he would go to jail if he committed another hate crime.
And it was not just that he had violated it, but the second time was more violent and was towards a different class of individuals, Vietnamese individuals.
Some people just don't learn these lessons. And honestly, when it comes to racist people, you can't really change them. I feel like once you are racist, you kind of just are. Like, that's who you are. How did you even get to that point where you think that way? So another incident goes down in 1988 where Mark attacked 2 Vietnamese men while high on PCP. If you guys don't know what PCP is, because I don't know what PCP is, it's an illegal street drug that usually comes as a white powder. It can be dissolved in alcohol or water. I do know one of my uncles like used to do it, and he said it would make you feel really hot and you just like are crazy. You're unhinged, okay? Which we have sympathy for our drug users, but PCP is one of those that will make you act up. And that's exactly what happened to Marky Mark. He took the PCP, he's a part of this gang life, and he decided to go and attack people for no reason, just because they aren't white. So let me take you guys to the scene of the crime, because it was in Boston, and this is exactly where it went down. So let's talk about the 2 men that Mark decided to attack on this day. It was at night around 9 p.m. on April 8th, 1988, and this guy named Tan Lam is a Vietnamese adult who was just traveling by car through Massachusetts, and I guess he left his car carrying a case of beer. As he crossed the street, Mark attacked him. He was carrying a large wooden stick about 5 feet long and 2 to 3 inches in diameter, which 5 feet long, it sounds like kind of like a broomstick, like a thick wood broomstick. Mark was only 16 at this point, but I don't know if he wanted the beer or what. He saw this man and said, Vietnamese F something. Honestly, I don't even know what he called this man, but he hit him over the head with the stick, and the guy was knocked to the ground unconscious. Like, honestly, Mark is giving me very much crazy LA people who are out here just like attacking other people, like the homeless. The stick broke in 2 and was later recovered from the scene. The man had to go to the hospital and was treated overnight. But as I mentioned earlier, there were 2 men involved in this situation, so Mark wasn't done there. So then Mark went up to this man named Ho Tren, who goes by Johnny, so we will call him Johnny. He put his arm around Johnny's shoulder and said, please coming, let me hide, after he spotted a police cruiser going down the street. Then after the police cruiser passed, Mark decided to punch this man in the eye, causing him to fall to the ground. Johnny says, I was on my way home from work, and I just remember a man coming up to me, saying something, and then hitting me hard in the face. He knocked me down, I got up and ran. I was scared that he was going to hit me again. I just wanted to get away. I had never seen him before, and I didn't know what he wanted from me. Why did he hit me? The guy was crazy. He must have been on drugs, which he was on drugs. And Johnny actually didn't even have health insurance at the time, so he didn't go to the hospital for his injury, which I get it. Like, I don't have health care either. I'm trying to figure that out. Mark ended up getting arrested for this incident, and when he was arrested, he made a bunch of racial statements, bringing up their eyes and things like that, being super specific to Vietnamese people and really offensive.
Both attacks were clearly racially motivated, as he made numerous racist remarks during the attack and following his arrest. When brought to the scene of the crime, he didn't attempt to deny it. Instead, he proudly declared, quote, I'll tell you now, that's the motherfucker whose head I split open.
Clearly, this is a racially motivated attack, and I honestly thought, like, when you get high on drugs, like, aren't you happy? Like, don't you want to do something fun? Like, it shows his true colors that when he gets high, he, like, wants to go and attack people and use racial slurs. And it looks like there were 2 other men who were involved in this situation, boys, probably part of the same gang that he was in. And it actually turns out that Mark admitted to everything. He was at the scene with police and said, you know what, like, I was the mother effer who split his head open, blah, 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 going on about how he attacked these Asian men, and he was proud of it. It is so crazy to me how powerful this man is. Like, he's worth hundreds of millions of dollars now, and he thinks like this, which is incredibly scary. The Daily Mail actually tracked down Johnny, and he had no idea that this boy who attacked him in the 80s is the same person as Mark Wahlberg, this big-time actor. One thing I didn't mention earlier is that a lot of people believed that Mark was the reason why Johnny is blind in one of his eyes, because you guys may remember that Mark punched Johnny in the eye, but during this interview, Johnny actually clarified that he was blind blinded during war. So it wasn't Mark's fault, but he did punch him in his bad eye. And even though Mark was a 16-year-old boy during this attack, he was tried as an adult, which, as he should. I mean, this guy has a track record of hate crimes. He was actually charged with attempted murder, but pleaded to felony assault, claiming that he was intoxicated and that the attacks weren't race-related, which they clearly were race-related when you are using those type of slurs. He ended up serving only 45 days in jail for attacking these two men, which ultimately isn't enough because this was his second time committing a hate crime. Clearly, Mark wasn't raised right because he's acting out as a teenager, and I think it goes back to his home because he grew up with a bunch of siblings. They didn't really have a lot of money. He wasn't in the best neighborhood, but honestly, it wasn't the worst neighborhood. So he can't use that excuse, but it seems like his family overall is a little bit rough around the edges, and him being the youngest one, maybe he was just kind of like left behind.
As the youngest of 9 children, you can only assume that the family's finances were usually stretched quite thin. When he was 11, his parents got divorced, and this seemingly proved a turning point in his life for the worse. According to locals who grew up in Dorchester around the same time as Mark and his siblings, the Wahlbergs were a big presence in the neighborhood, one that people knew to steer clear of. They were described as a, quote, tough crowd.
Nonetheless, there is no excuse for what Mark put these people through. And honestly, it seems like he's trying to use his power and his celebrity to erase the past, because he had written a letter to the governor of Massachusetts asking him to pardon him on those crimes. This all went down in 2014 because he attempted to seek a pardon for the second attack and to wipe it from his criminal record. He claims he's dedicated himself to being a better person and helping children and citizens and just taking care of society, so he should be rewarded for his good work. And maybe he has done a lot of good, but I have to say, a lot of people who have like $200 million to their names, they do a lot of charity work because it's a big tax write-off. It looks good. It just kind of goes with having a ton of money. You just do a lot of charity work. So it seems like he's like using something that's already kind of happening to be like, well, you know, clean up my past. Let's just act like it never happened. When this all went public, he ended up dropping the request in 2016 because it really didn't look good, and people started bringing up these hate crimes and how he really was as a person. And because Mark has made this public by trying to get himself pardoned, some of his victims have come forward and have something to say about him. Kristen Atwood was one of the 4th grade students that Mark attacked at the beach in 1986. She says, "I don't really care who he is. It doesn't make him an exception. If you're a racist, you're always going to be a racist. And for him to want to erase it, I just think it's wrong."
And echoed by Kristen Atwood, who asked that her face not be shown on camera. Atwood says she was 9 years old when Wahlberg and a group of his friends attacked her class during a field trip in what was a very segregated Boston.
It was a hate crime, and that's exactly what should be on his record forever. And for him to want to erase it, I just think is wrong.
She is entitled to feel that way because she probably has some pain she's holding on to from that moment. I mean, those type of things just don't disappear. I've been followed with rocks and being called gay slurs and things like that, and you never forget those moments. But it does turn out that Johnny seems like he wants to forgive Mark, and he believes that he should get pardoned because he is a changed man. He was young and reckless. He's a different person now. He deserves a, I mean, I was gonna say second chance, but maybe a 4th or 5th chance at this point. Thankfully, Johnny is a great guy, and he's got forgiveness in his heart because what Mark did is not okay. And not everyone agrees with Johnny because there's a group called 18 Million Rising, which promotes civic engagement among Asians and Pacific Islanders. They have voiced their opposition to the pardon, and they've got about 3,000 signatures. So there are other organizations and people paying attention to Mark, and they want to make sure that this doesn't get erased. I'm not entirely sure why Mark made this situation so public because it kind of angered people, but here are his reasons for why he wanted to get this pardon.
Why do you want the pardon? Because there seems to be some discrepancy there. Yeah, and of course everybody has an opinion, is entitled to it, whether I'm deserving of it or not. But you know, from the day I woke up in prison, realized the mistakes that I had made and the pain that I had caused people, I committed to turning my life around, which was not an easy thing to do because A, I still had to go to prison, so not being in the gang anymore left me alone. And then, you know, I was basically a follower instead of a leader, and I needed to change my ways. And going back into the community and still living in that neighborhood and having to go to the train station every day and pass those guys was a tough thing to do.
I mean, if you committed a crime like this, wouldn't you want it off your record? I mean, it would make sense to me, but I think there are some other reasons why he wants this off his record. With this criminal conviction on his record, he could be denied licenses to open up restaurants in California or in other states. He also could apply for other licenses that would, I guess, be refused because of this crime. He could work in law enforcement, which he's not going to do. And honestly, he actually owns 2 restaurants, but I do think that he wants to be able to open businesses, and this is holding him back because I believe the restaurants he does own, he doesn't have the max share. So like, you know, he has 49% of the company because he can't fully own it because of these crimes. If you were Marky Mark, you would want to hide this situation and act like it never happened. You wouldn't go public with this pardon or anything like that unless there was a really good incentive. And he's made other comments before in the past that are just so in poor taste. I mean, if he's racist, he's probably a little bit homophobic, you know what I mean?
In 1992, he was accused of breaking his neighbor's jaw in an allegedly unprovoked attack. Around the same time, he voiced support for a reggae star after the latter said that homosexuals should be, quote, crucified.
Does it surprise me that Mark Wahlberg is also a little bit homophobic? Not at all. But some comments I've seen him make in the past are really surprising. Guys, when I was doing research on this story, this comment, like, I mentally do not understand where this man's mind is at. So pretty much there was an interview that he did with Men's Journal. Let me just read it for you guys. If I was on that plane with my kids, it wouldn't have gone down like it did. There would have been a lot of blood in that first class cabin. Oh, of course, first class cabin. And then me saying, okay, we're going to land somewhere safely. Don't worry. How do you know how you're going to act in a situation like 9/11? How do you know you're going to be the one to save the day? It just seems like, is that narcissism? Comment below, guys. Is that narcissism? Like, to think that you, like, oh, I was there, I would have saved the day. Everyone on that plane was, you know, pussy. Like, it just seems really dismissive of what traumatic experience these people went through. It's just like, almost like everything's about him. And it does seem like everything's about Mark because he's this big time actor. He's so successful. I mean, he gets so buff for his movies. And I saw that some people have called him out because he does get really fit for some parts. And some people were wondering if that was natural. And even though he claims that he's natural, it's definitely not. Because if you did not know, you can take steroids or drugs to improve your muscle mass building skills. I mean, obviously I have no idea, so like I'm not the one to ask. But it seems like this guy named Richard Rodriguez is the person to ask because he's in jail and he sold steroids. And he didn't just sell steroids to everyone. He sold steroids to Mark Wahlberg, Josh Duhamel. I don't even know who these people are, but Mark Wahlberg is on the list. Richard had a company called Wellness Fitness Nutrition LLC, which is so funny. Wellness Fitness Nutrition, and they're selling steroids. But pretty much he would get a bunch of Hollywood clients because I guess he had the stuff to make them big for their roles. And this guy claims that Mark Wahlberg would order steroids under a different name, which sounds a lot like Jim Carrey, if you guys watched my Jim Carrey video, but he would use a woman's name and have them shipped to different addresses. So this guy was buying steroids from a big distributor and he was exposed. So, is he really natural? I don't think so. But I want to hear what you guys think in the comments below. Here is my email if you guys have any other video ideas for me. And until next time, send me some video ideas, send me some ideas, send me an email. Just say, hey, what's up? And until next time, I'll see you guys in a new video soon. Bye, guys.